El Badway.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Talking Horses, presented by Saratoga Water. Thanks for remembering the bottle, Sarah. Sarah
Here to
Albadwick,
help.
Andy Zerling, joining you from the clubhouse studio at Aqueduct. And we started out the day yesterday where short prices were winning one after the other. I think we finally saw a second choice win a race, and then all of a sudden, everything blew up and nobody hit pick six. In fact, there were a lot of combinations that would have been only four, and the last winner was the tied for the shortest price to Big Five, 28,000 for 50 cents, and it goes to show it's not about getting some short priced horses if you can get some big prices. And the one in the eighth was particularly tough.
Captain's daughter.
Yes.
Yes, that is not a horse that I could have come up with in that field.
I think it broke my streak. I've had almost all of Russell Cash's winners in New York, but they've made a certain amount of sense over the last few years. And she ran, not to knock her at all, obviously she ran well in there, but obviously, I think,
Mozienko
was kind of got caught in a little bit of traffic, but then she had nothing.
She should have run a bit better.
Yeah, she sort of stopped when she got in traffic, and Rosebud was supposed to win that race. She didn't run it almost was a race that gave the illusion of horses running well, right? I mean, because the race just was collapsing.
It seemed like she was almost going to get her, but she should have run a bit better.
Yeah, I agree, but it turns out, so we have that carryover of $22,000, starts in race number 4 as we head to the weekend. It's a gorgeous day today. We're fast and firm. You should head over to Naira Bets. If you're not a member of Naira Bets, no better time than the present. Use the promo code MATCH200. We'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. carryovers, we said, $22,140. That starts in race number 4, or so race number 3 is the middle pick 4, 2, 3, and 6 for those pick 4s. I think you pretty much got that by now, but we'll beat it to death. We also have a $25 bonus, bet 100 or more today at Aqueduct or Belmont at the Big A, and at Keeneland. As the days at Belmont at the Big A, Sarah, they're winding down to a.
Are you counting down the minutes?
We have this is I think 11 cards total, including today. Does that sound right?
It sounds appropriate enough.
I think so.
Is that drafted winning in there?
It does have a drafted look.
It kind
to
of looks like him, doesn't
Retired.
it?
So he's a gray.
It's on the
I
dirt
can't get back to the gray. How do we know it's in the dirt?
because he's covered in kickback.
You make a great point. Also, we're on from 12:30 to 5 today on FS2, covering the action. You were mentioning before we got on the air, fortunate news, Neko Zulu was injured, and therefore she's out of the Breeders' Cup. It's a shame. I mean, I'm so glad we saw her in Saratoga. To me,
Incredible
can't speak for you. I thought she was the true star of Saratoga. I'm not to take away anything from Arcangelo or any of the other horses or the race that White Abarrio ran, the Whitney, but to me, her 2 races up there were what brilliance is about
And really
in sprinters.
some of her best. And she was a horse that's always
Definitely her best.
always been so good. And I think this is something that you've talked about a lot, how Steve Asmussen is really able to have these 2-year-olds that just have the longevity and go on to improve and become monsters throughout their careers instead of tailing off or only having that precocity.
She might be the fastest sprinter we've seen in quite a while. I mean, I think we've been she was running wire speed figures that would have beaten, I can't go back that far. I'm around, I remember seeing Phone Trick run against Groovy at Belmont when I think Groovy got like a 132 buyer. He got one of the higher buyers ever recorded. And seen some brilliant sprinters in the past, but she was terrific, and we hope she's okay. But she'll be missed in the Breeders' Cup. She would have been one of the big stars in that. It'll probably open up the sprint quite a bit more. And I guess with the connections with Gunite, now you're going to see Gunite for sure in the sprint. He probably would have been there anyway, but we'll be sorry that Echo Zulu, we're happy that we saw her, and we hope she's okay. But
Yeah, sad news.
Big fan of hers.
Absolutely.
Got nothing like a really fast horse. A really fast horse to show what mere mortals look like. I thought Goodnight Olive ran her best race ever in the.
Just no match.
It just showed how well she ran. Goodnight Olive, who's a legitimately good horse, ran a huge race in the Ballerina. Probably wins the Ballerina.
How many
9
years?
out of 10 times, if not more.
Right.
And she got just destroyed by her. Anyway. We'll move on to race number 1. These
No
are New
Echo
York
Zulus
Breds
on today's
going a
card.
mile. What's that?
No Echo Zulus on today's card.
No, there's no Echo Zulus anywhere. She's, to me, she might have been the single most talented horse at what she did in the country.
Wow. Yeah.
I thought she was just incredible
No
up in
arguments for me.
Saratoga. A huge, huge fan of hers and hope she's okay, as I know you do as well. Race number 1, so early money, and it's very, very early, as we're almost an hour and a half. The first race is going to Pandagate. There's a name for you. Oh, and you've taken this one on top. Big Panda fan?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Mary Eddy already told me that we got to hurry to see the pandas, right?
Well,
There's no more
I
pandas
saw that
around?
she was talking about the ones at the Washington, D.C. Zoo, and I actually have seen them.
You have.
So I'm set. Once in a lifetime experience.
I told her I have a few pandas in my apartment. I'm not sure if she bought it. Mary Eddy works for us in the press office. You follow her
wonderful
on
human
Twitter.
being.
Follow her on Twitter, and you get a tour of the zoos around the
zoos?
Northeast. She also
Frequently.
works. She actually volunteers, I believe, in the
really?
Prospect Park Zoo as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Mary's great.
Mary's great. We love Mary. Also around the backstretch posting horse photos as well.
She's definitely going to be in the paddock taking a picture of Pandagate, right? She's got it.
She will be now anyway.
Is that why you picked it as sort of a suck up to Mary?
I don't need to suck up to Mary.
I do.
Mary likes me.
What's not to like?
Plenty. No, I just didn't see a ton going on in this field. I know that Wisecracker seems a legitimate second time-out starter that may have just needed a race first time out and was bet pretty heavily in there. But Clement does well with these first-time starters in these dirt routes. He's 3 for 17, 266 ROI over the past 5 years. 2 of those were in these state-bred restricted races. And this one just seems like has a little bit of pedigree. Clement also trained the Dam, 1/2 to 2 winners, none on debut. But it seemed like this one would not have to be a complete superstar to do okay here.
No, but 3 for 17, not getting it done at a short price, to be honest with you. And an ROI that's inflated, obviously, I would assume, by one big price. Yeah, obviously there's not a whole lot to go on. You got Mama's Midi, who ran sort of visually impressively, and this is why the eye test is the dumbest thing in racing, because you watch this race, you think, look at her, people love closers, right? And the race comes back a slow race, and she comes back and improves her figure a little bit and gets
There's
beaten by
nowhere.
almost 10 lengths. Having said that, he's been gelded. He's okay. I mean, I would argue of the worst that have run, he and In On It are the ones that did the most running, unless you want to make a case for Arco Augusta, who I don't want to make a case for.
No, I wasn't particularly fond of that one. I mean, this seemed like a good performance because the horse did break slow and made this move after a leader that was going gate to wire, but slow race, comes back and improves, just as you mentioned, really nowhere to be seen in that tall pole race, and we did see Quiet Wisdom improve next out, but again, there just
Tall
wasn't.
Paul lost, right, at Finger Lakes, the
He
short
did,
price
yes,
in one
yep,
of those stakes.
in the
Yeah.
aspirant, yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, he didn't run badly, but he lost.
Yeah, I think he was third. Maker, 2-year-old maiden, sprints to routes. It's not great. It's 2 for 22. Maybe you think, oh, this horse wants more ground because of the closing, but I don't buy into that
No.
type of notion.
But I don't know
you
that
don't
the
either,
more ground is going to be
so-
a problem for this horse. And
No, I wouldn't say it's a
wouldn't be
problem.
surprised if he won. And frankly, In On It, the connection is going to be a bigger price probably than he should be.
He
and
did
he
get
didn't run that
slammed,
badly. He
right.
did. He got absolutely crushed, right? I agree.
That
He
was-
made
that
a
was real
little bit
trouble.
of running. I don't think he did that much running. With me, with Wisecracker, it's a second-time star for Linda Rice that we know has speed, that's likely to be in front in this field. Her second-time stars improve a lot. This horse was bad first time. And I will say, against the notion of betting Linda Rice second-time stars, is this horse was bet first time like it was supposed to run
Yes.
first time and didn't. I mean, had some speed and then completely fell apart. I will say that Solo's Fury came back and improved 8 points, but Solo's Fury had a bit of a trip in that race as well, so the improvement maybe not that surprising still. I'm going to take him to wire the field, but he could be fool's gold.
And that's what I kind of wondered with him and what led me to putting the first-time starter on top, because that performance was just only okay, and he was bet like he was supposed to do quite a bit better than that. I know the winner was making up ground late and coming from off the pace, but Sorority Prank was on the lead and ended up finishing third, so it's not like, oh, he was forward and the pace
No,
only
he
came
wasn't good.
back.
He was
just
bad.
was not good.
I agree.
But
Christophe,
he may not need to be so
you mentioned
good.
the firsters. Christophe ran 2-3 with firsters in the first race, and it's funny, we were talking about it in the Prattle, how you have to be careful with prices because he can be very live with his firsters and turf routes at big prices. The one who ran third ran the best race, and that horse was a much bigger price than the
Yeah.
other one. And there's an argument he could have run 1-2 in that race. We'll move on to race number. He complained, though. He did complain because he owned the one that ran second.
That was sure well.
Horacio De Paz, who beat him, was making fun of him, which I can appreciate. So in race number 2, a horse who was entered in the stake race and probably would have been a factor had that race remained in the turf over the weekend, Lamorna, they're going to go back to sprinting, which she did first time. I don't think she ran that badly in her second start when they stretched her out, but I think she's a sprinter. And I mean, she ends up, this is one of those things where she was stayed a little bit and just completely drops out of the race, but it's not even that. She really made a huge wide run in this race and was very visually impressive. Listen, I'm not saying there isn't a firster who can run in here, but I don't want to take a stand against this horse.
No, I thought this run was pretty impressive from her, and she ends up going wide, just as you said, and ends up really circling this field. And the race came back a very respectable 70 buyer speed figure as well. And we've seen some of those horses come back and do a little bit better too, but just you see her starting to pick off horses right now, and just the wide run that she has to make. When you get left like that in a 5.5 furlong turf sprint, you do not usually run this well, especially first time out. And then the route race, while she did regress a little bit, that wasn't that bad either.
She didn't get left. She got bothered at the start. It's actually kind of worse in a way. No, and listen, the winner was that Alex Bregman horse, who was a heavy favorite, and it came back. She came back to lose, but I think she improved her buyer figure going long at Kentucky Downs, and she did it with an outside trip when the rails were down. So actually, she's pretty good, the winner of this race. As you mentioned, the second place finisher came back and ran a similar race, but had run very well in there for Brad Cox. And I agree, it feels like a legitimate race she's coming out of, and she legitimately ran well in there. So,
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I know she draws the rail, and yeah, you'd prefer to have gotten someone of an outside post. I don't think the start was her fault. So it's not as though she's a horse that necessarily has a gait issue. She did break a little bit slowly last time, and I guess that's the biggest concern, is she breaks a little slow from the rail.
Yes, of course it is, but with the running style that she's already shown, I think that being far back isn't necessarily a detriment to her. I do think that
It's still a compromise if she gets in trouble. I mean,
Sure,
you're talking about a
of
short
course.
price.
But being down on the inside is what I would think would be a little bit more of a problem for her if she does end up breaking slowly.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yes.
I mean, positionally, it's
Yes.
not just that she could get in trouble because she's drawn inside. You have the 9 Reagan's Flame second, who I have third.
Yeah, I mean, Cherie Javot just has good numbers with first-time starters like this. Worked well at OBS, sold for $185,000, worked in 10 and a fifth. She's 4 for 15 first-time starters with 2-year-olds in turf sprints over the past 5 years. 27% with a 733 ROI. Obviously, that's inflated a bit, but she does well when she spots her horses in these kinds of races. And honestly, I just wasn't too enthused with the too many of the other pedigrees in here.
Well, I mean, I won't be surprised if the two's a bit of a runner. They paid a lot of money after a 10 2/5 workout at Timonium, which is probably a reasonable work there where the works are a bit slow.
Yeah.
Paid almost $500,000, and there's not a lot of pedigree, so there's probably something to like about that horse physically. Twisted Romance, sale leaseback is a purchase over in Europe. There's a little bit of European form. It's Chad Brown, so I have them in there. But if Lamorna gets a fair trip, they're going to have to be runners, I think, to beat her. And, we'll see what happens in race number 2. Looks like a fun race. Nice to see the 2-year-olds get a chance to run on the turf. Speaking of turf, we are on the inner turf. The rails are at 9 feet on the inner. I thought it was probably a little bit of an advantage to save ground. And horse is going to take a lot of money in here. It always seems to take a lot of money is Waterville. And it's a horse that I've got third. You've left out completely. And while I'm not going to be surprised if she gets a piece of this race, she's not really a winning type. In fact, this was the first time she ever finished first.
Exactly. And wasn't she completely with the flow of the race in here? She was outside making up ground as the inside horses that were forward were kind of coming back. And
well, the Overacting ran the best race, finishing third, but she was forward.
No, well, she ran a great debut too. But Waterville, just now moving from that N1X level to horses like this, I just think this might be a little bit of tougher company, Overacting aside, and I just didn't want her at a very short price towards the outside because she is pace compromised, and I don't know if she's that good.
No, I don't disagree. I'm not a big fan of hers. I have her a little higher than you because I didn't like so many other horses in this race. But I'm not a big fan. You've got Collaboration on top, a horse who was denied a chance with an unfair break last time out in a race. She was the lone speed and the heavy favorite. I think she was around even money or so that day because she was lone speed.
It's questionable whether or not she can run anymore as her form was sort of tailing off at Saratoga. But if she can get back to some of those races that she was running at Belmont with that type of speed advantage that she should have in here, I think that she could be very dangerous. And I think today you might get at least a fair price, not a great price on her. But I think fair enough is like third choice in this spot.
Well, I find it interesting that David has her a bigger price than Orange Freeze because I think she was favored over Orange Freeze last time when she got left. So I hear you, and I've got her second, and I agree with you. I think she's a huge player in this race, and if you liked her last time, you're kind of supposed to be interested in her today. It's a little tougher field. I don't know. I'm curious to see how she's bet. I don't know that she's going to be. I think a lot of people are going to have a similar opinion, which I don't think is the wrong opinion by any stretch, but I think she'll be considered the speed. And as far as Master of the Tunes, be one for Dylan to be aggressive with her, get that position. Now, maybe Collaboration clears her, but she has the speed to be in there, and you and I have a disagreement about her. I just think that she's run well in her races and been a bit unlucky. She lost to a horse that got a perfect trip last time out. I mean, she's had a couple races where she's made her own problems, but for the most part, she's just kind of been unfortunate. I mean, I thought she ran huge going a mile here last year when she finished second behind Spongy, who would be 1 to 5 in this field, and got a great trip, Spongy, to beat her. And I think this is a good race for her to be forward and get good position with an inside draw. I like Master of the Tunes in here. I think she's very logical.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of this horse. I don't have any problems with her getting the mile, and I didn't even think her mile race at Saratoga, where she was third, was that bad because she was the pace setter in that spot. So you know that she can at least be close, especially if Collaboration, something happens with her again, if she's going to be sitting right off of her, if not a little bit more aggressively handled.
Who's to say that that wasn't a better field than this one also? Lisa's Vision, Classic Colors. I mean, who are the killers in here?
Right.
Golden Rocket was terrible last time, and I know
So
that
was Orange Freeze.
She was compromised by the lack of pace, the super slow pace, but I agree. Listen, you and I had a disagreement about her last time. I think that Orange Freeze is completely dressed up by getting unbelievably good setups in Saratoga, and I thought she was vulnerable, and I think that the two of the horses she has to beat, Collaboration and Master of the Tunes, both have a significant pace advantage. Now, I'm no like Stella Mars. You've got her third. I think I had her fifth. But she's also going to be more forward than her. And it just feels like there's horses in here that are at least as good.
Right.
That are going to
be
get
ahead
better
of them.
trips than she is in a race that doesn't, at the most, it's going to feature a negligible pace, right?
Right, and even that race where Stella Mars, last time where Collaboration was a non-starter, Stella Mars ended up being the kind of de facto
She
pace
was so
setter.
bad. I know. She's supposed to win that race, wasn't she?
She was?
I thought. I'm not
I
a
was
fan.
surprised by Sweetie. I mean, I know we
I know she
all
ran,
were,
but even Spinning Colors getting second. She should have got second. Sweetie
I
had a
will
good trip
say-
and she ran.
Stella Mars doesn't want to be on the lead.
Well, I don't know that she doesn't want to be in the. I don't agree with those assessments. No, I think that's
Oh.
trainer who we can agree to disagree with that. Those horses don't.
She will
like
be
to-
close.
I don't know what horse doesn't want to be on the lead in a slow pace, but there's a lot of trainers that disagree with me on that. Race
have to
number
ask the
4. So I found a Linda Rice stat on race number. Well, oh, thank you, Eddie. You remembered we didn't.
Thanks,
Pick
Eddie.
6, $22,140. Kicks off in race number 4. Thank you very much. I found a stat, a joking way, that I want to talk about with you. 50% drop, second off a claim in dirt sprints for Linda Rice. Those are some pretty horrendous numbers. It's not a huge sample size, but what I think is interesting is that she's a trainer that has really good percentages on these drops. I think a 50% drop in general, she's like 44 for 132. I mean, so her numbers are really good with the drop downs, but not second off the claim. I know it's a relatively small sample size, but for a trainer that's winning over 40% in general the drops, to me this was kind of telling. And man, doesn't this horse, who could easily win here, just feel so suspect?
And she has been so sharp with the claims that she has made out of Kentucky. Many of those horses off of Steve Asmussen has had so much success.
Some of them are gonna
doing
suck.
so. This is not one of those horses, right? I mean, he was favored at Saratoga. He didn't run a step. And now this extremely aggressive drop as far as the claiming tag for this horse, which she can do because she has so much success with a lot of them that, okay,
Well,
one doesn't work out.
Right,
Let's
I understand why
let
she's
them
dropping.
go.
He's just not, she doesn't, right. No, I get it.
But it's fair to be suspect of him. And just as you mentioned with those numbers, it's fair to kind of give this horse a little bit of a side eye because clearly they're trying to get rid of him.
Oh, no, he's going to be claimed today. And he's also forward in a race that was dominated forward on a track that was favoring horses that were forward. So we both have the same horse in here.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's appropriately spotted. He has some speed, but can sit just off towards the outside. He won last time out at Finger Lakes, and I think that the level that he was at might end up fitting well in here. Just seems like a horse that's been against tougher horses and non-competitive and had reason to be. Ocean's Reserve, Talkin' Pharaoh, Win for Gold, those are much, much, much better horses than he's going to be facing in here.
I agree. Moving Pictures will show his win last time out. And he got a figure that makes him competitive. But this was a dreadful field. And
what a perfect trip.
He got a great ride from Rivera coming up the fence to win it. I'm not, listen, to his benefit, much like the horse that you and I have picked on top, he's in good form. He's coming off a win. But he beat a terrible field. There are no killers. Listen, if the favorite doesn't run here, there are no killers. The horse that interests me a little was Amani's Eagle on the big drop down. I don't know if he can run at all anymore. And he kind of ran. He did kind of run off last time in a fast pace that collapsed. So I don't want to completely write him off. There is a question of whether or not he can run. But I thought he was a little bit interesting because you don't have to go that far back before he's just better than a lot of the horses in here, maybe all of them.
Yeah, his numbers, if you go back to even his third and fourth start ago, would make him a player in here. I don't like that it's been a really long time since he's had any success. His last win was March of 2022 on the turf.
But his race his race, albeit for a high percentage trainer at Churchill in May, is good enough to win here.
Yeah, and I don't mind the cutback for him either. I mean, once you get past Joking Way and Tommy Gunn, there's not much else going on.
I agree. It does feel like he kind of got good for a trainer who wins at a high percentage, and then he got claimed by another trainer, and his form just, and then Tom bought him, and it just feels like maybe he can't run anymore, and that's why they're dropping him down so precipitously here. Race number 5, they're going a mile and a 16th, or mile and an 8th, excuse me, on the turf. And I think a horse is going to take a lot of money in here is Miracle Mike, who you have third and I have nowhere, who did finish a decent third when probably overbet at 4-1, and he's improved. To me, I'd rather have Kingfish Stevens. Now he's got to get 9 furlongs, but maybe with 9 furlongs he'll get away with a more moderate pace. Because though this race did come apart a bit at the seams in the late stages, I don't really trust him. But my general feeling is, well, Miracle Mike could obviously win. He's part owned by a friend of mine, so I hope he does well for him. But I don't know. He feels like he might be kind of just fool's gold. Was he doing that much running, or was he kind of running when the race was over?
I think it's a fair question to ask. With him, he's just had less chances to disappoint, particularly on the turf. I think that he's run better in those grass races. And I think that Kingfish Stevens, I like him a little bit in here, just like you do, a little bit less than you do. But I wonder if anybody else is going to go? And I know that that's always
Well,
a
Harry Hood, I
question.
think, will be relatively close. We'll look at Harry Hood and Lord Finchire in that race. They finished second and third. This was a race that featured a very slow pace, and they just kind of ran around the track together. I didn't want any of them. I think Harry Hood will be stalking him, but I don't see Dillon being too aggressive. Kingfish Stevens is the speed, and he draws well to the inside, but there is a long run to the turn, to be fair.
I guess you try to say with Lord Flintshire that maybe he was in behind, but once he ends up getting enough room to run, nobody was going to catch Indian Mischief, who was just able to set one of the slowest paces that we've had, and we've had some slow ones on the turf. So
Yeah, that was a ridiculous race.
exactly, it was just a complete merry-go-round.
He also doesn't win Lord Flintshire,
No,
so the fact
he
that he ran second is not really a big surprise. So speaking of horses that don't win, what am I supposed to like about St. Joe Louis, who lost more races at odds-on for Chad Brown than maybe any horse in the history of training?
Because he's not going to be that short of a price today. And while claiming off of Chad Brown isn't necessarily something that a lot of trainers have success with, I will say that Mark Hennig, first off the claim, he does have some pretty good numbers over the past 5 years. 5 for 19, 26%, $3.73 ROI on turf, 2 for 10, so small sample size. He is that consistent second place horse. He's always insanely over bet, but I will say that he was forward last time out in a race that was had Quality G finishing second. Quality G is the horse that came back to win that race that Kingfish Stevens and Miracle Mike exit. Blinkers go on. Maybe they want him to be a little bit more aggressive early on. I don't know. He's not going to be odds on finally.
Well, he's not that slow. He's never been that slow. Well, he lost to 6-1 2 back. He lost to 5-2 last time. Listen, good luck. He's a big price. I can't stand that horse. I think he's just a complete and total loser, that horse. I mean, to have lost, how many horses can you look at that lost at 4-5, 1-2, 3-5, and 1-2 in successive races?
It's abysmal.
For Chad Brown.
Exactly.
I mean, and before that he lost at 6-5, 3-1 favorite, 9-5. I mean, and when he was 6-1, that was the first time in his career he was not favored.
Yep.
Amazing, that horse. As far as Blaine the Rule Maker, I think he's a horse that's worth watching his last race because he broke slowly and he did save ground throughout the running, but he never had a seam to run through in the stretch. And he was really running in traffic. He obviously ran by everybody in the gallop out once he got room to run through them. And looking at that race, not that bad a race looking at some of them. Third place finisher improved 10 Beyer points the next time. Fourth place finisher, 1 Beyer point. But that was a fairly live race. And if you look at him and you look at his race 2 back at 1 1/8, he lost by 4 lengths to Pioneering Spirit. And I know Born a Gambler was third in there, but Born a Gambler would fit perfectly well in this race. And it feels like he's keeping good company. I thought he was badly compromised last time by traffic in the stretch. And I just thought he was very logical, drawing an inside post. We'll see how it works out.
Fun race.
All right, yeah, I agree. It is. I mean, listen, when the weather's been good here, the racing has been terrific. The problem has been that every weekend has been a complete washout, and it gives an impression to the public who looks more often at the weekends that it's raining every day. The weekday cards have been very good. Yesterday's card was absolutely terrific. I mean, there was one big field after another, and you saw some of the prices and opportunities, and today's card is another one. The turf racing is very good. We just have to find a way to be able to stay on the turf. We'll see how that goes. We'll take a break. We'll be back with the late pick 4.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
We're back. I'm trying to decide how much I want to make fun of Sarah, who thought that Wally World was named for Walmart.
I didn't think he was actually named for that. It's just kind of funny because that's what we would call it.
Sarah's movie education, not
it's very
necessarily
poor.
as strong as it could be.
No.
Pretty
very,
embarrassing
very,
last
very
night
bad.
that nobody on Jeopardy knew the movie Chinatown. That's a disgrace, actually. and shocking at that as well.
When are you going to go on Jeopardy? Because I would watch that.
I would know how to bet Final Jeopardy, but I would suck otherwise. I saw a great movie the other day called Perfect Days. Not for everybody, but if you like slow movies, it's definitely for you. Race number 6, we'll take a look at the horse you have on top, speaking of Tom Collins, and Wally World, who exchanged some bumps in the stretch in that race with a horse that came back and did no running. But you can talk about Tom Collins.
This is a horse that was reined off the turf first time and was kind of ridiculously bet because this is such a turf pedigree and was forwardly placed. And I just thought that, he was one that made some sense in here because we saw Agate Road really have a slow start and come with this closing rush. Tom Collins able to stay out of all this traffic, but I think he sort of re-engaged when he saw a horse pass him to his outside. Of course, we saw Agate Road come back and win the Pilgrim. And Wally World, I know that he was a little bit green in the stretch. I didn't know that he was necessarily not causing that trouble himself.
Maybe. He was in a little bit of traffic before he got out. I picked him second. I agree with you. He's obviously a big player in here. I'm a little bit worried that was a race, that the reason that Agate Road ran well is that he came from last, he made his own trouble, whereas the horses that were forward in there had a real advantage. I'm not sure, and I've got him second, so I'm obviously not against him either. I'm a little bit worried that race is going to look good because of who won it, but maybe the horse that won it was the good horse coming out of that race, but it did get a decent enough fig once they could give it a fig. So we'll see. Or did they give it a fig because Agate Road ran a 4 or 75 in his next start, and he ran a much more professional race. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what he does. I don't have an answer. And like I said, I obviously have him up there too, so I'm not against what you're thinking in there. And I think there are some sort of interesting horses in here, some horses trying the turf for the first time. But the horse that and I don't know anything about this horse. I've certainly never asked Chad Brown about this horse. I do want to show the start of the race at Monmouth last time and show the head-on of the start from Midnight Council and then show you, because this horse, who is the number 3, he gets like slammed at the start and just completely knocked off stride. And you never know how it's going to affect a horse, but it's hard to believe that a horse was even money just because it was Chad Brown. There has to be more than, Chad Brown is a first-time starter in an 11-horse field.
Well, sometimes that does happen.
Even money? Nah, they don't go off even money in 11-horse fields just because Chad Brown trains them. There had to have been a story on this horse. And he's just, he falls, watch, he's last now. It gets worse. He just falls way, way back. And the posted fractions on the board were wrong. They were over a second slow. And the race was dominated in the front end. So it's not like horses were closing. I don't know. I just can't believe. And I will say something interesting. You think about some of the horses that were at Monmouth that came to Saratoga, forced ranking, okay? He's run 2 huge races since coming back. Digitize, the maiden, he's run 2 big races. So clearly, who's running Chad Brown's operation at Monmouth knows what he's doing.
Right, and I think they underestimate those horses
a little bit,
frequently.
sometimes. I think it's less than they used to. It used to be like, I remember reinvestment risk coming up, people saying, he was at, there's a lot of horses. Anyway, I have no idea. For all I know, maybe you're right, because I'll ask Chad Brown later, and maybe he'll say to me, I have no idea where this was got bet, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. The horse worked 10 2/5 the sale for what it's worth. I thought he actually ran okay in that workout. There is some turf pedigree, a very good second dam. I'm going to give this horse another chance.
You know what I found interesting? Chad Brown, first time at Blinkers, 2-year-old maiden, second timers. He's only done this with 10 horses. He's 0 for 10, 3 hitting the board past 5 years. I know it's a small sample, but when he's adding the Blinkers second time out for horses that didn't particularly
turf,
do
dirt,
quite as
or
well.
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
How many were on a turf, I wonder?
We can find that in a little bit. But 10 overall, I mean, he has so many horses that to have a sample size this small and have it be an over, I thought that was a little bit interesting.
Fair.
I don't think either of these horses are going to be so insanely short that they're not bettable and there aren't reasons to like them.
It's hard to know what price the 9 is going to be. It is IRAD.
Right.
Obviously the 1 is going to be favored in this race. That's a given. And I'm not. He's got Wally World 5-1 and the 1 7-2. How? It's not like Wally World was even bet. I mean, Tom Collins was 9-2 last time, and Wally World was 6-1.
Right.
So I'm a little surprised that David has them as close. don't you think that Tom Collins is going to be, unless there's some super live firsters, 2-1 or 5-2 in here?
Yeah, I think he could be pretty short.
I'm not saying he's not supposed to be. I just thought he'd be pretty short. I
Yeah,
took for
I
granted
agree.
he'd be short.
I mean, I think there's a lot going on in this race, but as far as price, but yeah, no, I could see him being quite a bit shorter. I just thought that stat was a little bit intriguing and kind of led me away a little bit from some of those.
What
two.
about the 11? Second.
I mean, Clement just has good numbers with these kinds of situations. With the 2-year-old first-time starters in turf routes, 21%, $3.47 ROI, path to a Group 2 winner. No Nay Never is very good with his 2-year-old first-time starters, 20%. Paid a decent amount of money for this horse, and the Dam's a 3-time synthetic route winner, so.
She wasn't much horse. She was terrible on the turf.
She was not the best.
The second Dam, good.
Far outside post, not great, but I just thought that there was enough going for this one at a little bit of a better price than some of the other entrants. Give him a shot.
It's funny to see a No Nay Never that was sold in Saratoga last summer. I'm more interested in Admiral Nimitz for the horses with European pedigrees. And interestingly enough, the Dam Wake Island ran for, I think it was a Marty Schwartz horse. Definitely was, no, you know what? I'm sorry, it was a Ramona Bass horse. This is bred by Bass Stables. And a Kingman, I just love the Kingman, so I thought that horse might be kind of interesting, as you say, outside post. But we'll see if the field stretches, maybe get some position. It's like a fun race. It's nice to see these 2-year-olds just getting a chance to run. It was such a tough summer for them, and we'll see. And maybe there will be some. It does feel like there are some hidden jewels out there in 2-year-olds, males and females, because of how many of them just didn't get their chances to run. Race number 7 lost a horse who was going to be one of the 2 choices in there, making Vodka Mardini, and we'll take a look at Vodka Mardini 2 races back, getting beaten 2.5 lengths before being eased last time. And I don't know, I hate to take a horse being often eased and a layoff and a slight drop down, but it's not a total dump job. And Sarah, if you don't take this horse, where else do you go?
Exactly. And the 2 coming out really changes an alternative, at least for this race, because with Vodka Mardini, I mean, you don't totally trust a horse that's been off for this long, but Linda Rice does have good numbers bringing horses back off layoffs like this, or at least solid enough ones, has speed. Now has been
She's good maiden special, maiden claimer.
Right, facing tougher horses. American Law, we just saw finish second to Forced Ranking the other day. So, I mean, he's a horse that's done okay for himself.
Yeah, no, this horse is, and the other thing is, the pace projector, I think, was wrong here, and I understand why the pace projector had Vodka Mardini in front of Lucency. Lucency, in my opinion, would have been in front in here. That horse is fast. They just didn't ride him that aggressively last time. There was another Todd Pletcher horse who was faster early who won the race. So without him in there, you've taken away not only competition, you've taken away the other horse that was going to be forward here, even along with Refua. So now you've got a horse that's just waltzing on the lead at 3 or 4 to 5 at here. I do want to use a little, and Love Takes Over. This is a horse that was probably okay when he first started out. They got a little over-aggressive. They scratched him out of a maiden claiming race because he was going to get claimed, I think. And I'm not sure his last race was really that bad, going a mile. And if the 3 can't run anymore, which is always a possibility, to me, this horse is screamingly the other one you want, more so than Screaming Uncle. Not that he can't win, but he was in a race that completely fell apart last time. And even though he ran second, for a 7 to 5 drop down for Chad Brown and Louis Laz, did he really do that much running?
And wasn't he just completely with the dynamics of that race?
Yeah, that's what I said. I said the race fell apart.
So I didn't want to trust that horse. I ended up throwing him in with some
okay.
scratches. But really, you're hoping that Vodka Mardini comes back and does okay. But other than that,
my picks in this race, obviously the 9 is scratched, are 3, 7, 8, 5. I didn't give you a 4th pick, but my picks are 3, 7, 8, 5. I apologize, I did not send those in, and I forgot to mention to Eddie, but the 9 is scratched.
It's your fault, but it's
in this
okay.
race. No, it's no big deal. But I appreciate it. Thanks. But anyway, I mean, the problem with Vodka Mardini is, and since we have a second, from a pick 6 standpoint, he is a very, very tough horse to want to risk your pick 6 play on. But he might be.
But how deep do you have to go otherwise?
Well, he might. Well, I would use 3. I'd use the 3 as an A and the 7 as a B, depending on how much I could spend. But where are you? I mean, is he the biggest? He's got to be the biggest favorite in the sequence, right?
Maybe the 8 in the last.
Yeah, but I still think he'll be shorter than that horse.
Yeah.
He'll be short because there are alternatives, though that horse is a horse that will be leaned on. I agree with you. He's going to be awfully short. And taking a horse that hasn't run since February, that's dropping down, even though Linda Rice's numbers are good,
often
those are the kind of things that get you in trouble in pick sixes, and you have to have some kind of coverage, at least in my opinion. Race number 8, a horse that will take a lot of money as well, is Costa Terra for Linda Rice. I'll tell you what worries me a little about this horse as we take a look at him. He didn't win. He should have probably won either one of these races. Now, in fairness, Classic Hatch obviously should have won that terrible off the turf. That Jockey Club
that Lost Ark
Derby was going to be a great race, and then it turned into a terrible race, and he was much the best. He was in massive trouble in there and should have won. And Blue Devils,
Blue
not
Devil
really
came
that
back
good
and
coming
ran
in.
third in the Lucas Classic with a 98 buyer. So
He didn't even run that badly. His horse in the Woodward. He's the worst to beat. I don't know. I don't like the fact he lost 2 photos. He's probably supposed to win.
yeah, that's fair. I think if it was against different types of horses that won that we hadn't seen come back and at least kind of prove themselves as being legitimate competition, I'd be more hesitant with him. I don't love seeing repetitive seconds. Obviously, you can excuse the Woodward, but
He's way the worst to beat.
He just has faster numbers.
I don't think there's any, constitutional lawyer probably a bit compromised last time, but he ran a decent race. I think he's not impossible in here. I think if you're trying to beat the 6, the horse to do it with is the 2. We'll take a look at Good Skate and Tonal Impact. And in my opinion, the likely dynamics of this race are very favorable to Good Skate and not to Tonal Impact in the same way this race was, even though neither of them won. Because Tonal Impact is a bit of a grinding type, and you've got to be careful with him. And I also wonder a little bit if he was starting to tail off a little bit for Linda. And maybe Pat Reynolds got him when he was declining a little bit. And a paceless race where he could be forward, it doesn't favor him as much. And I just think this is a good opportunity for Kendrick to be aggressive with Good Skate and go to the lead.
Yeah.
I don't trust him, but he's a better dirt horse than turf horse.
I agree, and he's done well in these marathon types of races, going to the front and at least showing some of that early speed. So I don't have any problems with him. I think that maybe you wondered a little bit if his form was going the wrong way, but then he showed that he can still run with those turf races. So I don't have any big problems with him. The horse I have a little bit of a problem with is Tonal Impact, who I think is declining, and I don't think he wants a 1.25 miles either.
I don't think he gets better with that much more distance. I agree with you. I think the mile to 1.125 miles, the mile one-turn races with faster paces are better. I agree with you. And one thing about Good Skate, when he won on February 26th, he did have the advantage of a bias that day. That is a bit dressed up, but I think he could take advantage. Now, Ironworks also has some speed in here, but I thought this might be a good opportunity for Good Skate to be aggressive.
Yeah, I don't know if Ironworks is good enough. I mean, he should be forward, especially if Good Skate isn't the one that's setting the pace in here, and that could work to his advantage. I just don't know if he's quite.
No, but he's potentially a speed. Yes. I didn't say whether I liked him.
I mean, I picked a third, but he will be from
the other horse who could be forward. Race number 9. One of the more remarkable beats the entire meeting was Alexis Zorba, and not just because I made a gigantic bet on him and I mean, I think he ran unbelievable. The winner ran an amazing race to beat him, and I will say Ironman Jimmy had a little bit of trouble in this race, and he ran a very good race to be third. I'm not trying to beat Alexis Zorba. I just think he lost this race because somebody else came and ran an amazing race to catch him. But this was a fast pace. I thought he was super in here.
Yeah, I don't have big problems with him. He has speed. He was coming off over a year layoff in that spot. He ran well. He got run down by a horse that I don't think is so bad either. With him,
the way he ran last time, he's not so bad. He's good.
Right. I mean, with him, I think maybe as a 2-year-old, when he was getting so heavily bet, especially on that European form, you started to get a little bit disappointed. But then he had all that time off, and he came back running, and he ran a number that's better than what he had as a 2-year-old, having that natural progression from 2 to 3. I kind of just went to the only other possible horse in here that is coming off a bit of a layoff.
His race in Europe when he was second to Little Big Bear was a giant race. But the race that was also really good was Blackbeard. I know that it was unsynthetic, but Blackbeard, who was retired after that, won like 3 grade 1s. As far as Highland Lord will show his last race, I've got him second because I can't resist any Bonner Young horse, but he better be a lot better than he was last year.
Right, and it's not as though Barclay Tagg has fabulous numbers off a layoff like this, though not impossible. He was forward in here. There's 2 horses that kind of sandwich him back a little bit, but I don't know that it was the end-all, be-all of trouble. I don't think he was ever a threat to do better than he ended up doing in this race. But, I mean, coming off of a race like that, where that's your first start, he at least showed that he can run a little bit, be forwardly placed, and just seemed like the other one that hadn't had as many opportunities as some of the others in here.
Yeah, he's going to have to improve. I put him in there because I can't resist Spawner Young's horses. Cigarette Boat is relatively logical, but at the end of the day, he's starting to run out of chances at short prices for me. The interesting horse is Borletti, because he was really bet to be 7-1 off of one decent race in Europe where he ran 5th in that Group 2, and the rest of his races were relatively subpar. And he's got a lot of speed, this horse. He can be forward, and I have no idea what happened because something went wrong, and Joel Rosario eased this horse.
Right.
And
so
I don't know what it was. It's weird.
I know, and now they add the blinkers, so it seems like they have the idea that they want this horse to be forwardly placed.
He's fast. This guy's got real speed.
I think you can just forgive that effort, whatever it may have been. You're taking a chance on a horse who there might be some issues, but at the end of the day, you're going to get a fair price on him.
Yeah, no, I thought he was a little bit interesting, and I don't know what it was, but they just completely eased him in that race.
But I guess it's good that he's back so quickly. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Blinkers on. We'll see what David Duggan can do with him in a fun race to close it out with that pick 6 carryover, $22,140. Play it through Naira Bets. Play it all through Naira Bets. Head on over to NairaBets.com. If you're not a member, use the promo code MATCH200 and we'll match $200 of your initial deposit. As we said, $22,140 in the carryover. That starts in race number 4 of our 9-race card. In race 3, in fact, 2, 3, and 6, we've got pick 4s. We also have a $25 bonus. Bet 100 or more at both Keeneland and Belmont. Opt in over at Naira Bet. You get a free $25 back playing those races here and Keeneland. As week number 2 coming up, the QE2, a very competitive race tomorrow.
It's a great race.
Super strong Euros. The U.S. horses are going to have a lot of trouble with the Euros in that race. There are some good ones in there. And finally, we're on 12:30 to 5 on FS2, covering all the action today. Sarah, thank you very much. You'll be back on Sunday with Maggie, as I will be out of town. And I'll be heading upstairs, be joined by Richie. I don't know if I've ever hosted with Richie.
First time for everything.
Yeah, I'm
You
looking
guys
forward
have
to that,
fun.
actually. Oh, for sure. We always have a good time. Anyhow, Johnny I getting started. Reprise the scratch and changes in a few moments. Have a great day.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.